Доброго дня! Ми раді вітати вас на черговій події публічної програми до виставки номінанток та номінантів премії Future Generation Art Prize, що нещодавно відкрилися у PinchukArtCentre. Запрошуємо вас найближчим часом переглянути виставку наживо, а також слідкувати за публічною програмою на сторінках арт-центру у Фейсбуці, Ютубі та Інстаграмі. У жовтні в межах теми «Майбутні технології та мистецтва» разом з українськими та міжнародними експертами та експертками ми будемо говорити про новітні технології у мистецтві. І сьогодні свою лекцію прочитає Крістіани Пол, кураторка та дослідниця нових медіа, професорка школи досліджень медіа в новій школі у Нью-Йорку та молодша кураторка напрямку цифрових технологій в музеї Уітні. Вона є авторкою низки книг та публікацій про мистецтво та цифрові технології, в тому числі широко відомої книги «Цифрове мистецтво», що присвячена розвитку цього напрямку від появи у 80-х роках ХХ століття і до наших днів. У своїй сьогоднішній лекції Крістіана сфокусується на останніх тенденціях цифрового мистецтва, його актуальних проявах та темах, що наразі перебувають у центрі інтересу художниць та художників. Дякую, що дивитеся нас, та передаю слово Крістіані.
Thanks so much for the generous introduction and for having me. And I will now start sharing my screen. Okay, the topic of my presentation today is digital art now. And of course, that is a subject we could discuss for hours. So what I'm going to do in the following is to give just a very brief and cursory overview of some of the trends we have seen emerging in digital art. I think that digital art is in a unique position compared to more traditional media because the technologies it uses are so deeply embedded in our society that digital art is uniquely positioned to reflect on where we are right now and how digital technologies shape our societies. So one of the trends we have seen emerge more recently is art that explores artificial intelligence or uses artificial intelligence tools for the creation of works. AI has, of course, infiltrated our society on so many different levels, from economics to entertainment and surveillance. We have self-driving cars or apps that are supposed to keep older adults active and engaged. So it's a lot of problematic and difficult territory, and art has been engaging with it from the beginning. I want to emphasize that AI has a long history of being the next big thing. It was conceptualized in the 1950s and 60s, and since then we have already seen two so-called AI winters in the 1970s and 1990s. Right now we're definitely in an AI summer due to the rise of machine learning and big data. So in 2020, I curated an exhibition titled The Question of Intelligence for the Sheila C. Johnson Design Center, the galleries at the New School. And this exhibition specifically looked at how AI is automating our senses from vision to speech and knowledge creation. And it also explored what that means for creativity, featuring a couple of works that were basically drawing AIs. Another theme in the exhibition was the impact on labor and the environment. I'm not going to go deeply into this exhibition, but wanted to give you a brief idea of what it looked like, and I will highlight a couple of projects that were shown in it. Among them, Harold Cohen's Aaron, which is an AI drawing software and the longest running interactive art project in contemporary art. Harold Cohen created Aaron in the late 1960s, launched it in the early 70s, And what you see here are a couple of manifestations of Aaron as the software creates its drawings on large-scale pen plotters and machines. Aaron has been evolving over the years and has been shown in various ways, from large-scale projection to screen-based versions. And here just a brief screenshot from the screen-based work that was included in the question of intelligence. Another area of experimentation with AI has been happening with regard to chatbots. So artists over the years have developed many bots, and one of the projects that got a lot of attention more recently was Stephanie Dinkins' Not the Only One, which is a sculpture and also a multi-generational memoir of one Black American family that is told from the mind of an AI with evolving intellect. So this AI has been trained on the data set, meaning memories and histories of 3 Black women. The oldest contributor to the storyline was born in the American South in 1932 and worked for 40 years in a factory. The middle contributor was in 1964 and faced racial challenges, but had opportunities that were unthinkable to her mother. And the youngest contributor, born in 1997, is biracial and basically trying to understand what it means to be Black or white in Black Lives Matter America. So you are interacting with Not the Only One by approaching the sculpture and speaking to it, and it will engage in a conversation. And what makes this work remarkable is that the conversation you're having with it is so different from the types of chats we are having with, let's say, Siri and Alexa. This AI storyteller is not connected to the internet and does not grab from resources. And what that practically means is that you're getting very personal and intimate stories that are generated through a data set that is typically underrepresented. Stephanie also got a lot of attention for her project Conversations with Bina 48. So Bina 48 is hailed as one of the most advanced social robots and was created in a collaboration between the TerraSem Foundation and Hanson Robotics. So Hanson Robotics approached the founder of TerraSem, Martin Rothblatt, and wanted to create a social robot with them. And Martin Rothblatt chose to create this robotic creature basically built on her wife and mimicking her wife, Bina. So Bina 48 is a robotic recreation of the actual person, Bina, and has been seeded with her memories, thoughts, and ideas, and is constantly learning from the network and conversations with others. So Stephanie Dinkins learned about the existence of this robot and contacted the owners, TerraSem and Hanson Robotics, and since 2014 has been visiting Bina and has had conversations with her. These conversations are focused on topics such as race, what it means to be human versus a robot. And what Stephanie is teasing out here, once again, are questions surrounding humanity and what a Black robot can learn from internet sources and data sets that are actually not representing her very well. So the conversations are highly interesting when it comes to the representation of race and of humanity. So Stephanie records them and they are shown as video installations. You see an image here on the top left of a 4-screen installation, and there have been various different formats of this. Another trend we have seen within the area of digital art using AI are so-called generative adversarial networks, GANs, which are generative models that were created in 2014 by Ian Goodfellow, who is a researcher in machine learning. And they have become such a trend in digital art that some people coined the term GANism for it. So in a generative adversarial network, you're basically training the AI on a training set of images, whatever they are. Then you give the AI a certain kind of task, and a generator will create those images they have been tasked with on the basis of the training set they have learned from, so mimicking the characteristics of those images. And the images that are produced by this AI then are checked by a discriminator who basically decides whether an image is good or bad, or real or fake, basically if it is passing the test. So artists have made use of GANs for all kinds of different tasks, and GANs basically entered the mainstream consciousness through the portrait of Edmund Bellamy, which was created by a GAN and sold for more than $400,000 at Christie's in New York. The project was created by a collective of young computer scientists, obvious, and they don't necessarily understand themselves as artists. And I have some questions about this area of practice, since it basically mimics what human painters have done very well for quite some time. So the question here being why we need AIs to imitate us on that level. A GAN-based project that I included in the exhibition, The Question of Intelligence, was Mary Flanagan's Grace AI. And in this project, Mary Flanagan explored what imagery AI might produce when it is trained exclusively on data sets of art created by women. So Grace AI was just trained on women's paintings. So basically it internalized a history of women's art, and was then tasked with creating a kind of origin story by looking at 20,000 online images of Frankenstein's monster and being asked to produce its portrait. So this work, of course, alludes to Mary Shelley's feminist critique of artificial life and male-dominated creation in her novel Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. And Mary Flanagan kind of casts herself in the role of this creator of a potentially monstrous technology. Yeah. So the system here has been trained with deliberately biased data, but biased data in the sense that the AI takes a decidedly feminist perspective. And here you can see some of the creations of Grace AI, who has been evolving her skills over time. What these images also show you very nicely is the specific kind of aesthetic of GANs, which tend to be these blurry, layery images. So once again, that as one of the areas. I also want to mention Ian Chang's BOB, which stands for Bag of Beliefs, a project that ultimately is focused on this chimera-like creature, Bob, who learns from people interacting with it and from various kinds of resources, and then tries to basically survive life's challenges and is struggling with it. Ian Chang recently did a new version or continuation of Bob called Life After Bob, which recently launched here at the Shed in New York. So this is an episodic anime series that was built in a game engine and is presented in real time. So in this case, you can interact with an engine that generates a film and a story about a future world in which our minds are co-inhabited by AI entities. So in this case, AI being used for generating cinematic kinds of narratives. I also at least briefly want to mention a project that we commissioned for the Whitney Museum's Artport website, the Whitney's portal for internet art. The project is called The Next Biennial Should Be Curated by a Machine and was co-commissioned by Liverpool Biennial and the Whitney. The artists are Übermorgen in collaboration with Leo Impet and Joasha Cruiser. And what we did here was train an AI on data sets from the Liverpool and Whitney Biennial and task it with the curation of biennials. So if you visit artport.whitney.org and launch the project, you will encounter this kind of spinning spiral. And as you click on the little red wheels on the top left, you will get an FAQ and the credit lists for the project and some biographical information for the artists. As you can see, the AI is continuously writing out sentences and revising them. And as you click on the little white spinning wheels that you see in the background here, you will launch different biennial universes. Each of them is also accompanied by a TikTok soundtrack. So what is happening in each of these universes is that the AI comes up with artist biographies. In some of the universes, all of the artists will have the same first name, in others the same last name, or they have kind of mixed names. But all of these fictitious artist biographies are based on real bios that have been fed to the AI. The AI, as you can see here, also writes out curatorial statements. And as you switch, you will also encounter reviews and press releases related to these different universes. So Whitney Biennial 2020 will be the first in a new series of public art exhibitions that will see present-day practitioners engage with and reflect on spooky, unorthodox, and experimental entertainment beyond the object. So a pretty interesting press release for an AI. So here you see another universe being launched. In this one, the artist bios are all mixed up, so different kinds of names. And what is very interesting about this piece is that we really learn about our own curatorial aspirations and desires from it. So I find it less compelling as an AI curating mind-blowing exhibitions, but what it reflects back to us is once again our own curatorial strategies, the language we use and the vocabulary we use. So this is one example that we recently featured at the Whitney Museum. And another trend I want to briefly talk about are immersive environments and virtual reality. We have seen more and more art projects that create immersive spaces, and also organizations that have been dedicated to specifically featuring this kind of work. As to virtual reality, we are in, I guess, the third phase of it, after its creation in the 60s, and then also a phase of experimentation in the 80s and 90s. We are now looking at the technology having evolved to a level where a lot more interesting projects are happening and the technology is becoming more widely available. So just as an example of an immersive environment, we're looking at Rafik Anadol's machine hallucination, which has been shown at Artec House. And this work is also making use of AI. You may be familiar with the works of TeamLab, the Japanese collective that creates impressive, immersive environments through reactive software. So as you can see here, the water is parting around the feet of people. And this installation also goes through various changes in terms of the seasons. The leaves are changing. What distinguishes TeamLab is their use of ancient Japanese and Asian traditions when it comes to the depiction of landscapes. There's a certain kind of flatness to the environment, but TeamLab very elegantly situates the viewer in these immersive environments so that you get this multi-perspectival kind of position within them, which increases the immersion. There are so many virtual reality projects that I could talk about. I'm just going to highlight one, Rachel Rosson's I Came and Went Like a Ghost Hand, which is a very personal project. So what the artist did here was through photogrammetry, recreate environments in which she has lived, from childhood homes to apartments. And as you navigate through the environment, the architecture will disintegrate, also questioning perceptions of space and of memory. So these are just brief examples of an increased practice in this area. And I cannot avoid talking a little bit about crypto art and NFTs after NFTs have experienced such a boom lately. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens, that is cryptographic tokens that represent a set of rules encoded in a smart contract. And every token belongs to an address on the blockchain, the data structure that holds transactional records and also supports cryptocurrencies. So the reason why NFTs lately have been in the press is that they have been hailed as this new mechanism of selling art and collecting art. And there have been a few misconceptions connected to this. So you often heard statements that now for the first time digital art could be collected, which of course is not true. Digital art consists of so many different forms, be they large-scale installations or net art or software art or virtual reality. And these art forms have been collected since the 60s, even if they haven't been a huge part of the market. And typically with every artwork you collect, you receive a certificate of authenticity. So what NFTs are, as non-fungible tokens that are not exchangeable, are basically a more sophisticated certificate of authenticity, in that they can nicely keep track of transactions on the blockchain. They are, however, by no means the first mechanism for collecting art. So NFTs came to the forefront of public discussions through the auctioning of a work by Beeple that fetched an unprecedented 69.3 million at Christie's. Beeple is a designer who also doesn't necessarily understand himself as an artist. And what was auctioned off were basically drawings. So one of the misunderstandings surrounding NFTs is that NFTs are not art or an art form per se. They are a certificate of authenticity residing on the blockchain. The art itself is stored online, so you do not necessarily have it or have possession of it. NFTs are a way of authenticating digital images that could be easily copied. And a lot of what is called NFT art basically takes the form of just single JPEG, rather than a larger, more sophisticated work, although we have seen a lot of blurriness in this area, and physical objects have also been sold via NFTs. So NFTs are not necessarily new. In 2014, I attended an event that was organized by Rhizome called 7 on 7. And this is kind of a yearly event Rhizome has been doing, where they pair up an artist with a tech entrepreneur or people from different areas to create a proposal for a work. And part of this lineup in 2014 were artist Kevin McCoy and Anil Dash. And what they proposed was what they called monographs. And ultimately, these monographs were NFTs. So the purpose of this was to create smart contracts specifically with the artist in mind, to build in recognition, royalties for sale, and all kinds of conditions, and allowing for easy reselling and remixing. So monographs didn't take off at all in 2014. And now we are looking at this gold rush surrounding NFTs, but this is really one of their origins. And the smart contracts that are embedded in NFTs today are not necessarily as sophisticated as the paperwork that would accompany a more traditional collection. I want to emphasize that art on the blockchain has been a topic for quite a few years. So in 2017, the British organization Furtherfield already published a book called Artists Rethinking the Blockchain. And we have seen over the years a few pieces of so-called crypto art that do not use NFTs as a sales mechanism, but really engage with them as a medium. One example of this would be the piece 89 Seconds Atomized by Yves Sussman, which was created in 2018. And this work shattered the final artist's proof of the artist's acclaimed video, 89 Seconds at Alcazar, which is in a few collections, into more than 2,000 unique little blocks or tokens. So they were sold basically as NFTs on the blockchain. And this is really an experiment in ownership and collective interaction. If 89 Seconds Atomized is shown as part of an exhibition, for example, all these collectors of the tokens need to come together in order to bring this work to life. And not all of those unique blocks or tokens may have been sold at the point of any given exhibition. So this is a work that basically investigates ownership. And I also want to briefly mention the project Public Key, Private Key by Jennifer and Kevin McCoy that we also commissioned for the Whitney Museum's Artport website. And this work investigated donorship. So what the McCoys did here was give a 16 millimeter film to the Whitney Museum, which entered the Whitney Special Collections. In this film, you can see an actress going upstairs, and embedded in these stairs and in the railing is a blockchain key that you can see here a little bit within this image. And after this donation, the McCoys opened up the project for an application for donorship. So people could apply for becoming the donors of record for this work. And the McCoys made a selection of 50 people or organizations who did the most original application. So what public key and private key does is complicate the traditional relationship between the museum and the benefactor and the audience. First of all, it is kind of democratizing donorship, which is typically something that people with a lot of money do, donating works to a museum and being acknowledged for it. So this opened up donorship to the public. And every one of these 50 selected donors received a digital certificate or token, which they were free to transfer, gift, or sell at will. So this also opened up a secondary market for donorship. So once again, really engaging with NFTs and tokens as a form of medium. So another interesting area of practice that we have seen related to NFTs is decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. There have been several platforms that have been experimenting with a kind of collective ownership and community. One of them would be Flamingo. And I think we're just at the very beginning of exploring what NFTs really can be in connection to art. And there are a lot of interesting models to investigate here. So this just as a very brief survey of some of the emerging trends in digital art. And thank you very much.